had this moment of like realization, like a breakthrough moment with my ex-girlfriend, where I kind of like broke down in front of her and kind of admitted out loud for the first time to someone else, but also to myself, that I wasn't feeling, how I wanted to feel, how I knew that could feel. I wasn't feeling myself, was all I could say in that moment. And that's when I kind of like, from there was like, okay, right, I need to do something to change. Like, I can't, if I carry on like this, it's not going to be good. Like, something has to change.
So you've written a book, first of all. That's pretty big.
Yeah. Yeah, man, it is. It's
How does
yeah,
that feel?
it feels good. It feels really good. It's I've wanted to put it together for a while, and I just procrastinated on it for ages, to be honest. So lockdown gave me the perfect excuse to just get on with it.
Yeah, for sure. That's nice. It's good. A lot of good things have come out of that for sure. So yeah, I've connected with your mission for a few years actually. I can't remember even
Yeah.
the first time I got wind of your podcast. But I did, and then it was like the traveling aspect of things that you throw in and all your in focus moments. Those little short
Mm,
snippets where you just dive straight in really, really helped for sure. And yeah, you're doing some important work, mate, and I love it. That's what I connect to mostly. Like your intention just seems to be in the right place, and yeah, I mean, I'm excited about the conversation, really. So
yeah.
you're doing lots of coaching now. Your podcast obviously has been going for about 3 years. You've written a book,
Yeah.
and I feel like you're the main thing you're doing is you're empowering other people to kind of take ownership and responsibility of kind of their own thoughts and actions through
Mm,
things that you've learned through your own journey, and obviously how to live more in the moment, which is fundamental, really. And I
of
think for
course.
me, discovering that, understanding a lot of these kind of Eastern traditions and ways of life and wisdom, I think living in the moment just makes so much sense, doesn't it? It just does. And when you kind of unlock that and you make sense of it, yeah, you just find a different meaning to life, as
Mm,
I'm sure we can go into. So yeah, your book. So for me, I've read it. Thanks for sending it over. So the search for clarity and a journey to understanding happiness.
yes.
Yeah,
In a nutshell,
in a
yes.
nutshell, mate. Reading it, it flowed so well. It felt like I could
Yeah.
pin up any page on a wall in my house and like stare at it and gain things from it every day.
Mm,
So
so
it reminded me of I remember receiving an email once, and it said, "Sorry, this email is so long. I didn't have time to make it shorter." Do you know what I mean? And because it's
yeah.
90 pages, and you don't overflow with information. It's awesome. It's like so digestible, but it's raw and real at the same time. But
Mm,
I mean, the clarity aspect of it is incredible because it's clear in itself, and there's nothing that's really complex, and it's so simple to digest. I think that's one of the main things about the book that makes it so tangible and just so kind of easy to just pick up and gain wisdom from.
yeah. And I think it's interesting that you're saying like how it kind of flows and it doesn't feel like too like drawn out, because I think like when I write, even when I read, like if someone's waffling around the same thing but without saying anything additional, I get like frustrated by it. So like when I write, it just comes out as if I'm talking to someone. Like I kind of don't really have a writing process. I just write as if I'm having a conversation with myself, and how that comes out. And I think why that comes across well maybe when you read it is because I'm not trying to, sell a big idea or be like, hey,
Sure.
like, if this, and it's just like, well, this is the point I'm trying to make, and I'm going to try and make it as simple as possible because I'm not someone who can understand complex theories and ideas and understandings. Like, I need it to be fairly simplistic for me to be able to understand it. So I think I present that in that way as well. And it's not like, I mean, I guess it probably is intentional thinking about it, but I don't sit down and think, right, how can I make this really simple? I just, as if we're having this conversation now, I just type it up as I'm thinking about it and see what kind of comes out and then read over it. And if it makes sense, I'm like, yeah, cool. So it's like, yeah, piecing it all together was interesting because it was all written at different points.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's the book's kind of made up of different write-ins and blog posts and weekly emails and stuff that I just have, and it's like scattered all over the place. And I've probably got over like 100 pieces of writing on my laptop. So I kind of decided when I wanted to write the book, I wanted to actually, funnily enough, you mentioned in focus sessions or the podcast, I wanted it to be like an in focus session book and like just have all of like the best learnings of the in focus sessions. But then as I started to look at the blog posts and other stuff, I was like, actually, there's more to this than I originally thought. Like I could make it into something different. And there was just this theme, and I think it's probably where I'm at in my life in terms of like trying to live with more clarity, trying to experience more happiness. So I think that theme just naturally came through when I was pulling together the articles that and the pieces of writing and the the thoughts and all this stuff that I was pulling from. It all kind of just came together in that format. And then when I kind of looked at it and tried to like almost structure it in an unstructured way, if that makes any sense, I wanted it because I wanted it to flow. Like there's no point just saying here's this. I wanted there to be a flow to it. So when I kind of really sat down and looked at all the bits of writing, I was like, okay, where are the themes? Okay, so originally there was 3 themes. I was like, okay, so we've got 3 really strong themes here. There's one bit about understanding, which is about understanding happiness, understanding the meaning of life, what you ever want to call it. The third one is like the mind and trying to figure out how the mind works in relation with our thinking, with our feeling and all of these emotions and everything. And then the third bit was self-love and why that's such an important thing for us to learn to love ourselves. But then as I continued to like look at past writings and stuff, I came across some other like bits and I was like, actually, this is really good. Like I want to put this in, but it didn't fit into the 3 categories. So then I took another look and I was like, actually, do you know what? There's a 4th category and it's about the freedom of life and living in that freedom. So like the final few bits of writing kind of fit perfectly into that section because I was sort of like shoehorning one into the understanding bit, shoehorning another into the mind bit, but it didn't fit. So when I looked at it again, I was like, okay, there's 4 sections here which are really like clear, and that kind of created the structure in terms of like the way that it flows, which is quite an interesting process in itself, to be honest.
Yeah, for sure, mate. Freedom. And when you went into that, I think that was the biggest learning for me when I read it and how you kind of framed freedom. I don't know if you've got other people that have mentioned that because I've not heard it in that way before. And it's awesome. I was quite, I guess, surprised that I hadn't because it seems so kind of right to do that,
Yeah.
But okay, before this, we could touch on that a little bit later. Let's just take it back a step and go into kind of like, because you're very raw and real in the book at the start, and you're saying the reason this whole journey began is because you suffer with depression, anxiety, and there is one point in the book that you say you hated your life. You hated your life, and that's such a strong word, isn't it? Let's talk. Could we talk about that a little bit? Because that's kind of like at the start. What, about 5-6 years ago was it?
Yeah, probably coming up to 7 years now. When I had the realization anyway, and I think like it sounds really strong when you say I hated my life, but like it was true. Like I was so miserable inside that I wasn't enjoying many aspects of my life, and I hated it because on the outside it's like cool, everything looks great. At the time, I had an amazing job in advertising. I had a great girlfriend. Like, I was earning good money. I had like my own car. I was on the way to buying my own place. Was able to go on nice holidays. Like all of this stuff, which is like tick, 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 tick. But I was miserable with it, and I hated the fact that I was miserable having all of this stuff, which was supposed to make me feel good. And you get to a point in life where, for me, it was like I hated it so much that I didn't want to be alive at times. Like I genuinely thought I'd just be better off not being here. Like it'd just be easier. That's the easy way out. That was the thought process. Like that's the easy way out, just not being here. Like it just, why go through all this struggle and all this hate for myself when I could just not be here? And I think I was in a place where, although I was having those thoughts and feelings, I was never really going to be someone who actioned it in terms of like attempting to take my own life. And I can fully understand how that does occur and how people get into that situation. It's a very lonely place. But for me, it was never an option because I felt like I had too much. There was still something that I was holding on to want to be here. And I think you get to a point in life where you either want to end it or you want to change it. And they're kind of the two options when you're in that dark place where you're faced with. So for me, the ending it wasn't an option because I just knew that I didn't like, didn't feel like that was the way out. So the change was the other option. And that only came after I had this moment of like realization, like a breakthrough moment with my ex-girlfriend where I kind of like broke down in front of her and kind of admitted out loud for the first time to someone else, but also to myself, that I wasn't feeling, how I wanted to feel, how I knew that could feel. I wasn't feeling myself was all I could say in that moment. And that's when I kind of like, from there was like, okay, right, I need to do something to change. Like if I carry on like this, it's not going to be good. Like something has to change.
Mm-hmm. And that becomes the self-awareness start, doesn't it? Like the kind of evaluation of, right, these are my thoughts, these are my thought patterns, and these are my actions, and I'm not really doing anything about it. So that awareness kind of grows. And then what tools, I think one of the questions I had to ask you was, at what moment did you find, obviously the motivation was there because you don't want to feel this way. I want to feel better. Like I know I can feel better. So so you got that as motivation, but then what kind of sparked it, kind of your inspiration? What were the things that immediately you were like, right, I know I need to do this? And I know you talk about the 1% thing, and that's phenomenal, and we should go into that. But was that early on in the stage, or was that something you later picked up?
No, the 1% thing I think came later. I think for me it was like, okay, it was kind of like when I had this moment, it was like, I can't really explain it. It's like just before I like broke down and like literally burst into tears in front of my ex-girlfriend, I had this moment where it was, the only way I can describe it is like in a movie scene where like everything freezes and you're just sat there, and then all of a sudden like the camera like zooms way out and it pans upwards, and you're just looking almost at your life and being like, this isn't the way, like this isn't the way, like this is what's happening, like this is not the way anymore. And then it's like bang, you're back in that moment and you're like, okay, like wow. And that's the exact moment I had the breakdown. And then you kind of like go on this journey. For me it was like, what do I need to do? Like what's the you start to look at the steps, like what's the process, like how do I get out of this, what do I need to do? And for me it was about first of all trying to understand like what it was I was feeling. And being a guy growing up, you're not really in tune with that. So that was like the first part, was trying to understand my emotions and my feelings without having ever done that before, which was very difficult. And then it was about, I guess, like what are the things I can do to kind of try and fill my brain and my mind and my life with as many positive things as possible. So that would be like reading like inspirational books or like listening to inspirational podcasts. I was just trying to fill my life with like inspiration, like be it doing more exercise, be it, whatever. It was just like fill my mind, fill my life with things that inspire me, and then see what can come from that space. So it was more of a like trying to attract, for want of a better word, like the positive, and try and let it flush out the negative, if that makes
Yeah, and
sense.
do more of the things that you know you like to do.
Exactly that, exactly.
Cool. And that shift, I mean, did you always know there was kind of light at the end of the tunnel? Because that's something for me, to be fair. In any given situation, I've always seen this kind of light almost. There's like something to look forward to almost. Like I know it can be better. Was that a similar thing going on?
Yeah, I think that's the initial reaction, isn't it? Is you wanna seek the the light at the end of the tunnel. You want to seek the positivity. You want to seek the pleasure in feeling good. You want to seek, you know, whatever the end is of the bad feelings. You want to be there, you want to feel it, you want to get there. But then I think that's also a dangerous place to slip into, because then you're forever trying to seek more, and you're never grateful of where you are and what you're doing and the moment you're living, because you're continually trying to push for something more. You've got this, like, addiction almost to like wanting more, needing more. Like, I wanna, I want that because it's gonna make me feel this way. I want to do this thing because it's gonna make me feel like that. I should do this because I know that I'm gonna get this feeling. And I think for me, that's where like the anxiety started coming in, because I've gone from like one end of the spectrum of like just being in this dark hole to like constantly trying to strive for more and better,
Mm.
and constantly my brain being so active and worrying about not having all of the more, that you then put yourself in a different space of like feeling like a constant, like you're constantly under threat, if that makes sense. And it's like, it's a totally different headspace, but it's all, from what I understand, or from what I've experienced, is all part of the same spectrum, because you've just shifted your focus onto, instead of like holding on to all these feelings and like pushing them down and trying to bury them and keep them away, you're letting them out, but you're trying to like get more and more and more. And it spins you out in a different way.
Yeah, there's that balance of striving for more, but being grateful for what you've got. And I feel like
Mm,
from the book, the realization, that the entire realization was being content with what I've got. And that helps me get
mm,
more. Like the quote
mm,
that you put in the book from Oprah, what was
mm.
it? Be thankful for what you've got, and you will end up having more.
Yeah, it's if you're always, I can't remember exactly off the top of my head. If you're always if you're always seeking more, you'll never um appreciate what you've got. If you appreciate what you've got, you'll always end up with more. Something like that. I've probably butchered that, but it's a lot. It's along those lines anyway.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, yeah, I've come to that realization a few times. I think I first heard about this kind of expectations and goalposts moving when you get there thing on do you know Aubrey Marcus and his
Yeah.
podcast? For sure. So he talked about it once, and he was like, well, I try not to have goals. I have a mission. Like
Mm,
goals change. You know, you want to bench press 100 kilograms and you get it, and then you feel different, and you feel different to what you thought when you got there. So then you're disappointed, yet you've achieved this goal. And often the goalposts are always going to move, because you're that type of person to want to develop yourself and be better. So
mm.
it's you talk about a lot, and never having enough. And
Yeah, and that's it. It's like, you just, yeah, the gym example is a great one, because it's, yeah, you reach the, benching 100 kg, and then you're like, okay, how can I now bench 150? You're not ever stopping and being like, wow, I did that. Wow, like, this is great. I can't believe I did it. This is amazing. Or looking back and being like, I remember when I couldn't even bench 40 kg. Like, can't believe I just bent. Like, you don't even, you maybe have that for a moment, but then you're constantly like, okay, how can I do more? How can I push, like, bench more? How can I, whatever? And it's just like, you can't go through life like that all the time, because you're just living in a space in your mind that doesn't exist yet.
yeah, I think people struggle with that balance of being grateful, being content, but then wanting to be better. And it's like it's a funny space to be in. What would your advice be to someone who does struggle with that? Even that's just for me, because it's
I
like I
think.
started a gratitude practice, and I'm
Mm,
focusing on the things that I'm grateful for, but then it's wanting to improve on these things, and be better, and attain I don't know, new wisdom, so I can be of service more, things like that.
hmm
So
hmm
that space of like balancing the two, really. I think it's
Yeah, I
just
think
a
I
modern
think
day conundrum, isn't it?
yeah, exactly. It's exactly it. And I think like even today, I was having a bit of a realization where, like, I was mentioning before that I've been in a bit of a funk today, and it's because I'm always trying to attack every day at level 10. But it's like, you're not going to be at level 10 every day. Some days you're going to be at level 6. So have a level 6 day. Sometimes have a level 4 day, a level 2 day. Like, it doesn't matter.
Mhm.
Like, the only thing that matters is that you, A, show the gratitude for where you are, how far you've come, and what you're doing. And then B, which ties into the 1% rule, is like, what's the one little thing, the littlest thing possible that is going to inch you that little bit further forward? It's like the, what's the film now? The Al Pacino film, the American football one, where he does that big inspiring speech about like
Yeah,
inch by
in
inch.
the changing
Um,
rooms, he's the coach. Yeah,
yeah, it's that. It's it. That's the 1% rule in an amazing story, because it's like all they have to do in that situation as an American football team is fight for every inch on that pitch, push that team further back inch by inch by inch. You don't have to worry about trying to push them back 50 yards. Push them back an inch, and then try and get the next inch, and then the next inch. And that's all the 1% rule is. It's like bring that energy every day to like, okay, cool. Even if I'm having a level 10 day, like what's the 1% that is gonna better myself where I started the day to the end of the day? And if you do that every day consistently over a year, that's a lot of 1%. Like it's, it doesn't work out mathematically to 365% better because there's all sorts of stuff, but we'll use that because it's easier to digest. And it's
yeah,
what I
about the
said
math.
yeah, I don't know about the maths, but that's that's the whole principle of
What?
it. It's just
Yeah,
like,
what was the guy's name? You talked about it in a podcast. What was his name? Something I can't remember. But he had a farm and he noticed all these
Pareto.
Pareto. Yeah, there you
Pareto.
go.
It's called Pareto's law. The 80/20 law is Pareto's law,
Uh-huh.
where he noticed that something to do with the peas in the pod. I can't remember exactly the full story, but he noticed that 20% of his plants were producing 80% of his product, of his produce. And then he thought, oh, that's a bit interesting. And it's that idea that like the small little wins add up in the long term. And the example I use in the book is like two trees side by side, or two plants side by side.
Mhm.
If one plant one day gets like 1% more sunshine, it can take in that little bit more nutrients, it can grow that little bit more. Then the next day it has that slight advantage over the other tree, and it can get a little bit more growth, a little bit more nutrients, a little bit more energy from the sun. So then it grows even more. And it's like, it's the comparison of like one plant stays where it is because it hasn't got that 1% growth every day, but the other one gets the 1% growth every day, and inevitably starts to crowd out the other plant. And it's like, if you look at your life where it is now, being the plant that doesn't grow, if you don't do anything, you don't try and increase anything or improve by 1%, you're going to stay exactly how it is. But if you just focus on 1% every day, which isn't overwhelming at all, it's not overwhelming at all. It's like if you did, let's think of an example, 10 press
Yeah,
ups a
that's
day,
so funny. I was just thinking
every
push-ups.
day. Yeah, 10 press ups a day, every day for a year. By the end of the year, you'd have done 3,650 press ups, which is 3,650 press ups if you did more than if you did no press ups a day every day. So it's like 10 press ups a day is so achievable. But if you did it every day consistently, some days you might do five, but you're still pushing, and that's what the 1% rule is about. And it's about applying everything that I've learned using that simple principle of like, you don't have to go from level 1 to level 10 in a day. You can go from level 1 to level 1.2, and it doesn't matter. That's still, and some days you might stay at level 1, and that's also fine. But over time, that consistency, that those little 1%, they add up. They add so much value in the long term. And we always look for the short term, like where's the spike, where's the peak, where's the big growth, where's my massive breakthrough. You don't need to have a breakthrough every day. You might only have like two breakthroughs in your life, but those little 1% are what adds so much value to your life more than the breakthroughs.
Yeah, I'm not concentrating on the negatives here, but you could see it the other way as well. That 1% of something that doesn't really align with me. Oh, it's only 1% of the day. I might compromise on something. Oh, I'll just have
Yeah,
not, just have 6 hours sleep tonight and do that. And you think it's nothing. It can add up if you go for the whole year with that. It's not going to serve you, is it?
exactly. And it's like if something comes and ruins your day for 5 minutes, yeah, like how many more minutes are there in the day? Why are you gonna let that one little 5 minute moment ruin your whole day? Like it's just, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, sure. Um, you shared something on your podcast the other day. I think it might have even been today. A story though that you talked about, and it reminded me. It was like the backpacker one and the hiker, and being
Mm.
present essentially. But it reminded me of a story. It came straight to my mind. Have you read The Alchemist?
Yeah,
You would.
yeah.
We probably got 3 copies, haven't you?
No, I've just got the Kindle one. I actually need to get the physical one, to be fair.
Yeah,
It's a good
I've got
reminder.
two. I'll send it you. So yeah, it reminded me of a story in that, and it was a parable about let's call him the seeker goes to find this that the true happiness of life, and he goes up to travels for over exaggeration, but it, literally in the book, 40 days into the desert, finds this castle, and then the sage is there. He's waiting in line to see this amazing wise man, and then he finally sees him. He says, "Oh, I haven't got time to tell you the answer to what the ultimate happiness, but I want you to go around the castle, admire every room in the house, look at all these amazing artifacts in the gardens, make sure you do this. But hold this spoon," and he gives 2 drops of oil on the spoon. So the guy goes out and looks around the castle, comes back, and then the sage is like, "So, did you see the castles?" And he was, "Oh no, I was too concentrated on looking at the spoon, but I've got the oil drops here." He goes, "All right, go around again, have a look. You know, don't forget this, don't forget that." Comes back and he's like, "Oh wow, there's so much in this place. It's beautiful. It's just amazing, every part of it." And he's like, "Oh, what about the oil drops on the spoon?" He's like, "Oh well, forgot about them. Obviously, they're not there anymore." And it's like that bit of wisdom is like, wow, the meaning of true happiness is look around at the wonders of the world, but don't forget the drops of your spoon.
Mm. Yeah, that's it. That's it. That is, yeah,
Because
that is it.
and
And it's like,
it is different, but it's basically saying, to me, I feel that's like, don't forget the important things. Don't forget your
mm,
family. Don't forget your friends. Don't forget the things close by. Marvel at everything. But don't
yeah,
forget.
and don't forget what makes you you. What the values that are your core values. Like, don't forget those. Like you carry those with you, and you can still appreciate the life in front of you, even if you've got these, even your goals, your dreams. Don't forget those. Like, it's good to have those, but don't get so obsessed in what they represent to you. And it's funny because that reminds me of another story, because this is turning into story time. Of It's a parable of a fisherman and a businessman, and the fisherman is sat on the beach in his boat, and he's out there, he's catching fish for the day so he can go and feed his family. And the other guy comes and joins him. The businessman sits there and he's fishing with him, and they're chatting and they're catching fish. And the businessman goes, "Hey man, like, if you caught more fish, you could go and sell these in the market and make more money for yourself." And the fisherman goes, "Well, why would I want to do that?" And the businessman goes, "Well, if you make more money, then you can, feed your family with it. You can employ other people." And he goes, "Well, why would I want to do that?" "Well, if you employ other people and you're making more money, you can buy a nice house." "So why would I want to do that?" "Well, if you've got a nice house and you get even more people, and you increase the business, and we set up shops in different towns and villages, then you can have more time for yourself." And the fisherman goes, "Well, why would I want to do that?" And the businessman goes, "Well, then you could spend all day fishing on the beach." And then he stops and he looks around and he goes, "Yeah, I guess this isn't so bad after all."
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. And it's like you get lost in that, in the story, the narrative, the status
Mm.
quo, the modern day. And we're really just trying to all get to the same point. We're really trying to figure it all out and get to the same point. And if you don't reevaluate and bring on more self-awareness of what you truly want, you actually probably striving for the same thing as this guy, but you're doing it in totally different ways.
Exactly. And it's like we're all striving for the same point, and we all experience that same point in the same way, assuming that that point is being happy in life. Like, the happiness
Yeah.
that I feel isn't different from the happiness that you feel. We experience it in different ways, but it doesn't make the happiness any different. And I think when you turn your um your perspective and your view inwards instead of looking for the more, you actually find that, you know, happiness is always a lot closer to home than what you think. It isn't out there, you know, somewhere else that you have to go and get it and find it and grab it with two hands and hold on to it. It comes from in you, and the way that you experience and the perspective you have on life and the gratitude that you show, and how much love and compassion you bring into every moment. Like that's where the happiness comes from. It doesn't come from, you know, if I can earn 100 grand a year, or if I had that Ferrari, or if I could go on a 5-star all-inclusive holiday in the Maldives or whatever.
Yeah, I always feel that happiness is more of a byproduct of living a purposeful, meaningful life in your present with it. You know,
Mm.
um, I think it was I think it was Russell Brand in his book when he talked about happiness. He said happiness is actually like an erection. The more you think about it, the more it goes away. And
Yeah,
I
no,
kind of
it's true.
connected to that. I was like, yeah, I don't resonate so much with the word happiness. It's more like contentment, which
Yeah.
become more gratitude. Um, and also I want to mention, I think it was Joe Dispenza who talked about his overall mission in life was to show people that, and you talk about this, is to um, for people to realize that happiness can't be found outside of yourself.
Mm. Yeah, that's it. And I think that there's a quote in the book that's it's the truth. Oh, it's saying like the truth to experiencing happiness is no longer trying to seek happiness, something like that. Um, and it's that when you stop that, you know, like the Russell Brand example, when you stop thinking about it or trying to reach it or trying to get it, you actually realize that you experience more of it because it's always been there in the first place.
Yeah, remove the things that are blocking it. Yeah, there's that
Yeah,
quote about love when it says, "Don't go looking for love; just remove everything that's blocking it." It's everywhere. It's
exactly, exactly.
it's within you, right? Right now, right in this moment. Mm.
That's it.
I'd like to ask you a question actually about your friends and family, if you want
Hmm.
to go into that, and how much of a kind of support you had, but also more than anything that you've definitely changed a lot in these 7 years. But was there a point where you struggled to kind of go that next step because you felt like you're gonna kind of move away from certain friends, and how did you kind of
Mm,
deal with that? Because I think that's a big thing in people who want to like change themselves and self-actualize and go down this path of like self-development, and you will change. And but often people don't, because it's like the drinking culture. I think a lot of people wouldn't drink if it wasn't for the relationships they have with that
mm.
substance, you know.
Yeah, I think the best way to kind of look at it is like if if you could trust and you knew that your growth is going to bring better things for you, are you going to have a fear of letting go of the things which might not be good for you? Probably not, because you would know that better things are coming. And I think for me, I always struggled with the kind of, not, I wouldn't say the relationship with my friends and family, but more like my relationship with their expectations, if that makes sense, of how I should be, or how, you know, the person that I am. And I think as time's gone on and I've become more comfortable with my own journey and where I'm at and who I am as a person, you naturally create a stronger sense for yourself, which then creates either an understanding from people or not. And you begin to experience maybe new friendships, and you realize that actually these friendships click in an instant. And sometimes that means that, you know, you might not necessarily cut off like people from your past, but it just means that you might end up spending less time with them, you know. And that's fine. It's like a relationship. You might meet someone and be really into them, and the first 5 years of a relationship is amazing, but then by year 7, 8, and 9, you're beginning to distance yourselves because you've grown, you know, apart. How many people break up from a relationship because they've grown apart from their partner? Like, it's a normal part of life. It's like you wouldn't stay in a job 15 years, if after the third year you were like, I'm not really enjoying this, you'd go and seek something else that you might enjoy more, you might be able to bring more enjoyment to. And it's the same with anything else in life. And sometimes it's harder with relationships because there's so many deep emotional connections, and there's a story that you have and a history and memories and all this. But if you removed all of that stuff, i.e., when you live fully presently and in the moment, you don't bring any of that stuff with you. You just experience what you're experiencing in the moment. And none of those things matter, because it's just they've gone, and that's fine. So it might mean that you start to distance yourself from friends. And it's definitely happened in my life where, like, some of my friends who maybe 5-6 years ago, we were like super close. We'd probably go and do something most weekends, or, there'd be stuff like constant chats in WhatsApp groups or whatever. And it just, peters out, and it's fine. It's a process of life, Again, if you're not always stepping forward, you're just staying put where you are. And if that the growth isn't happening because you're staying where you are, then you have to ask yourself, what's keeping me where I am to stop me experiencing the growth?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't actually think there's any staying where you are. I think you're either moving backwards or going forwards.
And that's it. And the other thing is, when it comes to, like, I guess the purpose of the book in terms of like living with clarity and happiness, through that clarity, you understand the things that maybe don't sit so easy with you. And yes, we've spoken a lot about appreciating what you have and being grateful. You can't be grateful for a bad friendship or a bad relationship, because it's not good for you. So you create the space in yourself to understand that, okay, maybe this isn't the thing for me. Maybe I need more of that space, more of that room for growth for myself, and something else will come along. Like, I've been single for 7 years. Doesn't mean my past 7 years has been a disaster because I haven't had a partner. Do you know what I mean? That's not the way it is. Like, I've recently met someone that I've been dating, and we've been getting on great, and like, that's really fine. Like, that's cool. But I'm also very aware that, like, I can't be so attached to that, because again, in 5 years that relationship might not be there. You just don't know. So it's like, and we carry all of these attachments and expectations with us, which ultimately set us up for feelings of disappointment, because we're trying to seek the pleasure in them to make ourselves feel whole. But if you already approach the situation from a wholesome point of view, I am already complete, I am already enough, I am already whole, the way you show up in that space changes,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that will probably be for the better when it comes to relationships, because you're able to communicate that with friends or potential partners or family or whatever, colleagues, that you're able to communicate that, and that no matter the approach that you're taking for yourself, you're still going to be whole when you step away from that, if you have to step away from that at some stage, whereas you're also going to be whole whilst you're in that relationship. And I think that's the key, really.
Mm-hmm. And I think that shift in perspective, where what's good for me is good for everyone else. Everyone. If they're my friend, if they love me, then what I do for myself is what they want, surely.
Exactly. If they really are that good a friend, and if they challenge that, then maybe you need to ask yourself questions as, like, actually, is this the kind of person that I want in my future? Like, there's a quote that I shared on Instagram the other day of, like, stop spending time with people who fit your past and start spending time with people who fit your future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, ask yourself, do you really want to have that person in your life? They're on their own path. It's clearly different to mine. Yeah, that's cool. And I think framing it like that is so important. I think we do get attached. I think the main thing there is attachment to a previous me, to a previous relationship that we had so much fun. Like, teenagers, college, university, I had so many friendships that were like genuine then, and had so much experience with that person in a different space to where I am now. If I was like not living in the moment with what I am experiencing now, and constantly like attached to that then, and like meeting up with this person just because we had this amazing time together, It's not
exactly.
real.
And and it doesn't mean you can't be grateful for that. Like two of my best mates, closest, like longest mates, like we're like brothers. Like we did everything together throughout school, like our early 20s. We did everything together. Like we don't hang out as much, we don't chat as much, but when we meet up, it's just like straight love because we're appreciative of each other. Like, but it just means that, our time shared isn't as much as it used to be. But it doesn't mean that that's necessarily a bad thing. It just means that the three of us are on our own paths. And when we do come together, we can be grateful of all the love and things that we've shared and appreciate, where each of us are on our journeys. And inevitably, that then brings you closer again because sometimes the distance between you and a person makes you realize either how much peace they bring you or how much pain they bring you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And ultimately freedom.
Yeah.
Let's talk about freedom because I love that analogy of the blue sky. And you can attribute it to many things, but could you delve into that a little bit? The freedom. What does freedom
Yes.
mean to you?
So freedom, like for me, freedom is an experience of life. It's an experience of the way that you live. Again, we look at like, okay, when I, if I spend 15 years like working in this career and I earn X amount of money, then I can like have money put aside and I can have my pension and this and that and the other, and then I can live freely in life. Well, yeah, you probably can, but you can also live freely within life now because it's an approach to the way you live. You can choose or approach every day with a sense of freedom because you have an infinite amount of possibilities and an infinite amount of choice and an infinite amount of opportunities every day. But if you want to just be in that tunnel vision and just look at what you know and how your life is and how it's going to stay, then you're not going to be able to experience that. So, the good way to look at it is like that freedom is always a part of us. It's our kind of natural state of being in a way. We're born to live freely. You look at the way a child's operates, like the way their brain works, the way their bodies work. Everything's totally free. They've got freedom of movement. They can squat down lovely. They've got full range of motion of all their limbs and their body. Their mind has no filter. They say what they feel. They feel what they say. They act in any given moment to how they're feeling. That's the freedom because you have no attachment to anything. And it's only once we start to develop the inner voice in our heads, the thinking mind, and start to understand the way that society is set up, that we start to lose that slowly, slowly, slowly. So the blue sky analogy is that freedom is always there for us. That freedom is always there. It's the blue sky. Some days, the clouds are there. Some days it rains. Some days it's sunny. But even now, like I'm looking out the window, it's a cloudy day. But what's behind the clouds is this blue sky, which is the freedom. That doesn't go anywhere. It's just dependent on whether you're willing to live looking at the clouds or live looking knowing that the blue sky is behind it, even though it's a cloudy day.
Yeah, yeah. Someone said the other day, "I hope it's sunny on your birthday," and I'm like, "It's always sunny. There's just clouds there. You do know that."
Exactly. That's exactly it. It's always sunny, and the blue sky is always there,
Yeah,
and that's it. Like when you look at it like that, and it's the same with like happiness and living with clarity. It's like they're like almost natural states of living for us. Like they're always present in our lives. It's just whether we're allowing the clouds to block our view or block our sense of connection to that.
yeah, yeah. We are innately, to quote Mr. Tony Riddle, we are innately empowered, wild, connected human beings. Right? We're born into
Exactly.
that, and then conditioning and environments play their part in bringing the clouds in.
Mm,
Hmm.
that's it. And that's it. And that's all understanding what freedom is like that it's there and it's a way to experience your life. So it isn't something you should be striving to live. It's something you should, live freely within.
Mm-hmm. And you talk a lot about meditation. That's
Mm,
obviously been a big way to recondition, reprogram, reset your mind in in not getting lost in thought and just observing, right?
yeah, exactly. That's it. And it's like again, like the biggest misconception of meditation is that you sit with a silent brain and no thought, which isn't the case at all. It's impossible for you to have no thinking going on at any given time because your thoughts are always there. Your thoughts are always generating. Like even when you're fully present in, you know, something like playing football, you might not have all of these worries of like your life or how much you're earning or the bills you've got to pay or, you know, whatever it may be, or your past or whatever. You're fully in tune with the game that's going on around you. You've still got thought because the thought applies to the moment. So when you meditate, you don't sit there silently with no thinking. You actually sit there and just allow your thoughts to come and go. You allow your mind the space to process your thinking without any judgment on those thoughts. So when your mind is particularly active, the one thing you probably need to do is meditate. You don't meditate to stay zen or calm or do it when you're feeling calm. You do it to give your mind the space. And that's one of the biggest benefits I found from it is or still do find from it is like the space that meditation allows you to tap into, which again is our innate sense of space that is part of us, which is within us, which is the space that our brains are meant to operate in. But we have all of this other thinking and thought and feelings going on that we get caught up in the attachments that we have to those thoughts and those feelings. We don't actually allow ourselves the time to process what on earth is going on. And then we have more thinking because we're trying to process it ourselves, which is adding more thinking to the equation. But when you slow everything right down and you just sit and you're present and you're focused on the breath or whatever the center of your meditation is, the brain quietly does its job in the back. And if you bring a sense of freshness and no judgment to the thinking, your brain quietly gets on with its job. And that's where you create the space for yourself to experience, you know, all the things we've been talking about, like gratitude and freedom and love and compassion and, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you awaken to that, because it is like an awakening when you realize it, and that's why they call it an awakening, because it's not something you're attaining. Oh, now I've got it. It's not a piece of knowledge that you've intellectualized. You've thought actually that I've awakened to the state that is natural.
Exactly. And it's like the way I look at it is like there's a whole dynamic at play. It's not like do this one thing, do this one thing, do this one thing. It's like all of these things operate together, like having no attachment, living, you know, with a sense of freedom, the clarity, the being present, the gratitude, the love and compassion, the love that you show yourself, the way you show up in relationships. All of these things work as one big moving part, you know, much like our bodies do. It's like if I move my arm, it isn't just my arm that moves. It's like all the muscles in my neck and my back connect. My glute probably tightens up a little bit. Like it's all connected. I probably even slightly shift my balance one way, which means my ears are doing their job in terms of like keeping my balance. Like it all works in check with each other.
Mm-hmm.
The same
Your
way.
eyes, try doing that with your eyes closed. It's very different.
Is exactly. And it's like it all works together. It might not always be so obvious, but it does. So when you start to deepen your understanding of all of those moving parts and all of those elements, you then get a clearer picture of what is happening in your life and how you're showing up. And that's where that sense of clarity comes from, by deepening that understanding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's going to be, I mean, it is now and it always has been, but more so the future of this planet and how technology is just exponentially growing, and it's kind of its own organism in itself. I mean, do you think a lot about the future and how, what I'm kind of alluding to is that meditation and stillness is going to be something we like pay for, like, or something that to get to, when we do that anyway, we go on holidays to experience just moments of bliss. We just don't integrate it very well. But it's, I think in the future, meditation and the art of stillness. Have you read the book Art of Stillness by Pico Iyer?
No, I haven't. It's on my reading list.
Yeah, man, you'd love it. It's very good. It's quite small as well. It's easy. It's an easy read. He talks about this actual analogy about I think it's really about happiness. It's like, it's if you lose your keys in the house, why are you on the street looking for them?
Mm.
So don't go looking on the street for happiness. You've lost your keys. Find them in the place there, in this house. You know,
Mm. Yeah.
look for it inside
Yeah, I love that.
yourself, because you own
Yeah.
it. It comes from you. It doesn't come from other things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's it. And I think, the point there of the stillness, I think when you truly understand what stillness is and the space that is created within yourself with that approach of stillness, changes everything. Because when you slow down and you become more still, you don't have those stresses of future. And yes, like I said, it's good to have the goals. It's good, you don't get to a point where you've released, for me, 170 plus episodes of a podcast
Mhm.
without having some sort of plan or some sort of, you know
Intention.
process. Or it doesn't just happen. Like, you still have to have processes around it, and produce it and all of that stuff, but you can only do one thing at a time. And relaying it back to the 1% rule is like, what are the 1% that you can do now? And that's why they're the focus, is because you break down this big complexity of life, this big complexity of the world that we live in. And that you're mentioning technology and travel and work and like all of this stuff. Like, you break it down into its simplest form, which is like, what's the 1% that's right in front of me right now? Like, bringing your attention to that.
For sure. Do you have a physical practice other than skateboarding? And we can talk about that and your journey through on the board. But
Yeah,
what's your
man.
kind of physical? Do you have a physical practice of any sort?
Yeah, I do a lot of exercise. Like, obviously before gyms closed, I was in the gym like 3-4 days a week. I do a lot of stretching, a lot of I've got my own sort of morning flow that I do on the days where I don't work out,
Mhm.
or I'll do yoga. Obviously skateboarding is a more recent one for me. It's just good fun. It's just great for me because, similar to when I was in the gym, you don't really focus on anything other than, like, you can't be too focused on anything else other than being on a skateboard, because if you lean slightly wrong, like one way, you put your balance in the wrong position, you're going to fall off. So you have to be totally connected and present with your board, your feet on the board. And I find it really helps just clear my mind. And I think sometimes we need those moments or those practices of where we are the most present, in order to almost experience that thing I was talking about with meditation, to allow your brain to process. I always used to rave about, like, going to the gym. Like, when I was before well, the back end of last year, before I went traveling, I was going to the gym at like 7 a.m. You'd be in the gym, and it's like podcast in my ears, focusing on my bench press, and that's the only two things that I'm focusing on in that moment. And what happens behind that is that my brain ticks over, and I often had like my best ideas while I was working out, but then nowhere to write them down. So I just had to be with them, and okay, cool, that's gone. If it comes back to me later, then maybe it's something I should action. It's like, you need to create that space for yourself and that time. You can't always be like on. You need to have those slow moments. And if you can do that in a physical way as well, you're benefiting you're shifting your focus to your body rather than it being totally like mind centric. You're shifting your focus to your body, which then allows your mind to be a bit more free in its own thinking, just to create that space and that processing that it needs to do in order for you to then be able to show up, in another space in a better way. So again, it's all one moving part, man.
Mhm. Yeah, and the thing you said about your ideas and them coming up in those moments, especially when you're meditating. Like for me, it's about getting into stillness, which you talk about a lot in the book, and how to create more ways of that, how to cultivate it. But in meditation, I'm still, and the best ideas are coming up, and I'm like all these to dos. I'm like yes, 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 and you have to trust. You have to trust in the process. Like they're here because
Mm,
I'm here doing this intentionally.
mm,
So this isn't, they're coming up because of this. I don't need to
yeah.
distract
And
myself.
yeah, that's it. And I think, like, I was thinking about this the other day. I was like, do you know what? Maybe maybe I should. I've got like various notepads. So I've got like one notepad which is just like general to-do list, like writing notes. When I listen back to interviews and stuff, I got another notepad which is like more for my coaching, and another notepad which is more for like, I wouldn't quite call it journaling, but just like general, like maybe goal setting or whatever. I was thinking maybe I should buy like a mini notepad and just keep it on me all the time. So when I do have these moments and these thoughts and these ideas, I quickly jot them down rather than noting them on my phone or whatever. Just like quickly jot them in a notepad or create some sort of like system. Like there's an interview I was listening to with what's his name? I can't remember his name now. The American podcaster, the Torre show. I can't remember his full name. It's not coming to me. And he was saying that he's got like two notepads. One is like his to-do list, and then another one is like actionable stuff that might be like pick up the shopping on the way, pick up the whatever on the way home, do that, like stuff that you can action but don't necessarily need to be part of a bigger approach to your business or whatever it is, which I thought was quite interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to flip it on its head. In the last bit of your book, you asked 3 questions. I'm going to ask you them.
Go on.
So what's your biggest challenge right now?
Biggest challenge right now is balance.
Okay.
Balance.
On the skateboard.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Always that one. But balance in the sense of like balancing coaching, podcasting, book release, being a son, being a friend, being a potential partner for someone. Do you know what I mean? There's like, it's finding the balance and all of this stuff, but also having the space and the time for myself. And I'm very much, as I was saying before, I'm trying to be at level 10 every day, which is very harmful. And I know it is. And I think trying to recognize that and understanding that brings balance, because you can't always be at level 10. If you drove around every day with your car in 3rd gear and pedal to the metal, you're going to burn out your car. Sometimes you have to cruise in 3rd gear or put it into 2nd and just cruise a little bit more. Or do you know what I mean? It's like, it's not a healthy approach. And I think that for me, it's like I take on a lot of stuff myself. Like I do everything myself. Like I work for myself coaching the podcast. I do everything myself apart from the editing of the audio, and now the editing of the video because I've passed that on. But everything else, like searching for the guests, researching the guests, setting up the times and the dates. It's all, there's so much that goes into it, promoting it, this, the, that, the other. And that's just one area. That's just the podcast. Then there's the coaching. It's like, you still have to connect with people. You still have to, build relationships with potential clients. There's all of this stuff. Then you add the book into that, and it's like the whole process of like writing it, editing it, getting it published, like, or self-published, printed, promoting it, putting it on, even just getting it onto Amazon is like a whole faff in itself. Like all of these things, it's just like, it's more stuff that you're adding. And when you're trying to approach all of that stuff at level 10, you're pretty much not going to get any of it done, because at some point you're gonna crash and burn.
Yeah, I think it's so important to realize that. I was just thinking of the analogy of my NutriBullet. I don't put it on level. It's not got a level, but when it's been on for a while, and then you just take it off for a sec, and I don't want to burn it out. So it's like, why do we not take that and apply it to our own lives? It's super interesting when you frame it like that. I often think about nature, what's going on in nature. Is it level 10 all the time? Is the sea level 10 all the time? For sure, it's not. Today, it's so still. It's incredible. And
that's it. Like looking and referring to nature is always the best. Always the best, because we forget we're part of it. We are nature. We're as much nature as the trees, as the sea, as the bees, as the birds, as the fish. Like, we're as much part of that as anything else, and we forget that because we're trying to be level 10 all the time.
Yeah. Someone's on the first podcast, my friend Johnny, we were talking about mentors and the hero's journey, and I'm like, is it really important to have a mentor? I always thought, God, I'd love a mentor, someone to hold my hand. And then he said, well, nature could be your biggest mentor. And that
Mm,
frame just was like, wow, yeah, get into nature and you find some answers for sure.
100%. And I think that's for me where I found the biggest connection going traveling at the beginning of this year when I was away for 2 months, January and February in South America. And I think the biggest realization I made was how much I connected to nature and how this is where a lot of my more recent realizations and understanding of stillness came from, was like being stood in like this one scene in particular, which was like this like top of a mountain, river, like kind of small river flowing through this set of trees, rocks either side, and just standing there and being like, wow, like honestly, like wow, like this is just here and this is just riding out its course every day, no matter if Bill down the road is working his nuts off to try and earn 10 grand in a month, whether this person is like, doing their nutting, trying to go shopping, like this is still here, just flowing. And the sense of stillness that I got just from that scene, like it was almost like a wave of emotion that hit me, man. It was like, you just sort of stood there and you're like, you just stop, you literally just stop, and you just look around and you think, how do I get this sense into my life?
Yeah, amazing. I live near the sea, and the vastness of it is both, it's overwhelming in two senses of the word, because it's bigger than me, and it's like all my things that I'm thinking about, my issues, my obstacles, my problems, like this is so much bigger than that.
Mm,
Like it doesn't care about that, and it almost takes it away from me, because I feel like looking at such vast landscapes and looking at, that's why getting on up high is amazing, because you just realize the expansiveness of so much happening, and then it takes your issues away. It really does.
and that's it. And I think that connection there, and like you said, using nature as your mentor is, even looking at the seasons, man. You look at the seasons,
Yeah.
like, the seasons that trees go through, for example, like they lose their leaves, they die, and then they blossom again, and then they fully flower, and then autumn comes back around, then they start to decay and wilt away again, and then they die again, and then it's just the process that they go through. And it's like, it's beautiful when you actually think about it. It's beautiful. Like, what is more beautiful than seeing the autumn leaves going down a street lined with trees, mid-autumn, in the height of autumn, and just seeing the golds, the greens, the browns on the floor, on the trees. It's a beautiful scene. But really and truly, all that's around you and surrounding you is decay and death. But it's beautiful because you know that it's a transition, and that those leaves will fall, and then come March, April, they'll start to blossom again. And that you have that sense of knowing that that's going to happen, so you can appreciate the transition, which is autumn.
Yeah.
You can appreciate that season of autumn because you know that the spring and the summer are going to come again. And I think in life, we don't appreciate our transitions as much as we should, because we're worried that we're going to be there permanently. And we never are. We never are. It's a season.
Yeah, we are contextual beings, aren't we? So when
Mm,
things are in context, it can be experienced so differently.
yeah.
Like if you really thought
That's
all
it.
the trees were dying, it would be a complete and utter disaster. It's a beautiful
Yeah.
analogy to see it like that, because in context of everything, it's a beautiful thing that's happening.
Yeah, it is, because it's although it's decay and although it's death, it's growth at the same time.
Yeah,
It's
the
life
death
at the same
death of
time.
one thing is the birth of another, right?
Exactly. And it's like we forget the relationship between the two. It's like the relationship between suffering and pleasure, and or love and hate, or good and bad, negative, positive. Like, they all exist in the same space as each other. Like, they have to. Like, you wouldn't have an autumn if you didn't have a spring. You can't have a summer if you don't have a winter. you know, and in the UK we pretty much have one season all year round, and it's a, jokingly, but it's like if you did have one season continuously, like a day like today that was just sort of fine, sort of okay, cloudy, not hot, not cold, not windy, just okay, you wouldn't know what winter and summer are, because they're opposites, they exist together. So if you can experience a summer, you know what a winter is, and vice versa. If you experience winter, you know what summer is.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's how it works. It's the yin and the yang.
Yeah, and they never exist in the same space, really. It's making room for the next transition. And you could attribute it to relationships. You need space, you need to let go to make room.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like there's in every negative situation in your life, there's a positive in there. Like it's in there, because again, looking at the yin and the yang, you've got the black and the black side, the white side, but then you've got the black within the white and the white within the black, which is the negative in the positive and the positive in the negative. So they are there. You just have to know how to shift your perspective to appreciate them.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. So good. So many gems. What would you like to create in the next 12 months?
Oh man, flipping my own questions. I love it. 12 months. So for me, man, like it's about the main things are coaching, to be honest. Like I want to use this time I've got now to really focus in on my coaching from a kind of external point of view, in terms of like building up consistent income, and get to a level where I can live back at my flat, because I've got a flat that I own that I've rented out because I went traveling, but was going to move back into when no, I wasn't going to move back in. I rented out because I was going to be traveling throughout this year. But I want to get to a space where I can live in it without having to have a flatmate and have to rent out the second room, and just I can pay the mortgage myself. So I want to get to a financial position where that's a possibility for me. So that's externally. Internally, just more of just the knowing, just being with the process. And as much as it sounds like I've got it all figured out, like I have many days where I'm trying to battle with the idea of like wanting more, or not being appreciative of where I'm at or what I've done, or people always saying to me, oh yeah man, you're smashing it, like you're doing amazing things. And some days I'm like, it doesn't feel like I am, because you're so focused on like what's next, on trying to achieve more, that you can't appreciate it in terms of like what you're living and what you're experiencing. And I think one thing that's really been apparent to me during lockdown is the being, and just approaching every day with that sense of being in that day. And I think for me, to be able to create that over a long-term period is everything. And it's this all the work I'm trying to do with myself and with coaching clients, and through the podcast, and through the book, is trying to help people along that journey, or at least get to a point where they understand that journey for themselves. And I think, yeah, by this time next year, if I can look back and be proud of all of that, and where I'm at and who I am and how I've showed up and everything, then in theory, I'd look back and be very satisfied with that. Mm-hmm. But in reality, again, if I stand here now and I look back on a year ago, I'd be extremely happy with what I'm doing. But like I said, there's days where I just don't feel that, because you can't fully appreciate it if you're not fully present with it.
Yeah, and I think having that relationship with, although it's amazing when people say you're doing well, like you're smashing it, but really I know deep down that what you say I don't define myself by that. So I appreciate it, but it doesn't really matter to me what happened. What matters to me is how I feel.
That's it. And unfortunately, we live in a world, in a life where everything is too quantifiable. You quantify your success by your income. You quantify your popularity by the amount of likes you get on Instagram. You quantify for me, the success of the podcast by the amount of listeners. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think it's called a monophasic culture. I heard it the other day. Yeah. Is it? I think it was Jamie Wheel. Have you heard of Jamie Wheel? He wrote Stealing Fire, and he's like conscious states and altered states and flow states and all that. But he was talking about this. We're a monophasic culture. We, in the Western world specifically, it's all science methods, and that what we can measure, right?
Yeah, exactly. And the funny thing is, if you look at like the juxtaposition between like physicists and Eastern mystics, like the physicists are trying to explain the unexplained by breaking down, you know, the way atoms work and photons and like all of this crazy shit that we can't see but is there. They're trying to quantify it and explain it and give some sort of understanding to it. But then on the other hand, you've got the Eastern mystics who just feel it and they be it and they trust in it,
Yeah.
and they don't need the explanation. And I think that's the perfect balance between the West, where we're Western society, and that more kind of Eastern approach. It's like it's less quantifiable. It's less like, do you really need to understand? Do you really need to analyze? Do you really need to see an increase in a quantifiable success, or can you just be all of those things? Can you be success? Can you be happy? Can you be understanding? Can you be knowing? Can you be trusting? Of course you can. We just don't allow ourselves to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, amazing. Yeah, I'd love to end it there pretty much. I'm going to ask you the last question though. What is the biggest learning from writing the book? So you said reading the book, but I want to ask writing the book.
Writing the book, man. Well, I think
Because
really
you've given birth.
that, yeah, well, yeah, there's that. Giving birth is tough. But I think the biggest learning through writing the book, I think the whole book is a learning, man, because like I said, it was all written at certain points in my life. Like there's articles and writings and pieces in there that were written 2 years ago, and reading through some of those, I think I really did, you know, particularly when I was reading through it in its like finished state. Like I read it over multiple times to try and find typos and stuff, which I still managed to leave a couple of in there somehow.
I
Which
didn't
again,
recognize them.
I can tell you the pages they want if you want. There's two. But when I was reading it, it's like I did have a moment of like wow, like I have come so far. Like 7 years ago, when I was depressed, if you told me where I would be, what I'm doing, the state I'm at within my own mind, within my own sense of self, my own sense of knowing, I probably wouldn't have believed it, to be honest. I probably wouldn't have thought, even maybe 3 years ago, to bring it closer, I don't think I would have believed it. I would have liked it. Yeah, I would have been like, yeah, cool, that sounds wicked. Like, where do I sign up? But I don't think I would have believed it's possible. And I think that's the thing I learned through writing it, is that it is possible. And I think even the fact that the book exists is testament to that. Like, it's possible. Like, yeah, you can, like, I've put it out myself. Like, I might only sell a handful of copies, and I'd be over the moon with that. I would be over the moon with that. You know, I might go on somehow to sell tens of thousands of copies, which would also be amazing. But I think going through the process of it is the real amazing part. It's the journey of it, which is the amazing part. And I think the book really was a nice reminder of the journey being the success and not the destination of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Amazing, mate. I feel like I could talk for you for a long time, but
Yeah, man. I don't even know how long it's been. It feels like it's been like half an hour or
timeless
something.
flow states.
Yeah.
Awesome, mate. Well, thank you very much for making this happen,
No,
mate. It's awesome. I think
my
you're a
pleasure.
powerful chap, and I think it's a great journey you're on, and how you're truthfully telling your own story and tales, and how you're putting it out there as well. I think you're not overthinking it, and it's coming out in such a truthful way. So I think respect for that, mate. It's good. Keep on doing what you're doing.
Thank you. I appreciate it, because, you know, like I said, sometimes you do get caught up in oh, I could have been doing this better, or you look at other people's content and you think like, oh, it's so much more like
Yeah.
put together, and it's more like complete in inverted brackets, but I know in commas, sorry. But then I'm like, no, like, I'm speaking my truth. I'm doing it my way. That's, again, it's not about the big picture of like what that represents. It's about if one person takes value from that, then that one bit of video, that one podcast, that one piece of writing, it's done its job. Like, cool. Don't get me wrong. If like millions of people were to take value from it, that would also be amazing. But it's not about that. It's about the one. It's about the 1%. It's about the 1%. Like if you putting that 1% out there for someone else to take on as their 1%, it might inspire another 1% somewhere else down the line for someone else. And to me, that's more impactful in ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, it's the truth, and that's a frequency that other people pick up on, and more truthful people who are seeking that truth, and therefore you will attract them. And that's where you want to be. You don't want to be in a room full of people trying to be someone, or seen as powerful people. You want to be in a room full of people like you, right?
Exactly, man. And it's like, you look at Tony Robbins. It's like he coaches and works with tens of thousands of people, maybe even 100,000 people a year or whatever, which is amazing. Like if you can do that, great, like fantastic. Like I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but for me, like if I can impact a handful of people, like that's still huge. Like, and again, it's about appreciating that. That's huge. That could be six people's lives, six whole people. That is amazing. And that's the impact, that the smaller impacts where they make such a big difference in the wider scheme of the world.
Yeah, and I think that's where change comes from, because it allows other people who don't see themselves as a Tony Robbins, don't see that as the benchmark, see that, oh, that's never attainable. People like yourself, it's almost so relatable that that's how you change things. That's how you change the world.
Exactly.
So keep on doing what you're doing, mate. Awesome.
Thank you, man.